Welcome to this month's Salute to Service. With me today, I have Medina County resident and Vietnam veteran, Mr. Joe Destro. Joe, how you doing?
How you doing, Ed? Nice to see you.
Glad you could come on the show.
Okay.
So where are you originally from? You from Medina County originally, or?
No, actually, I'm originally from Sicily.
Okay.
Okay, I was a naturalized citizen. Came over when I was about 2.5.
With your parents?
With my parents. My mom was actually born in Cleveland, and then during the Depression, they picked up and went back to Italy, and me and my brothers and sisters were born in Italy, and then after World War II, we came back here.
Wow. So so you were 2.5, so you really don't remember anything from back then in Italy, I see.
No, well, I remember mostly stories
Right.
that my parents used to tell me, you know, about being back there. But I did get the opportunity this past summer to go back to Italy for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And meet families. Actually met the only aunt I have left that's alive that just celebrated her 102nd birthday.
Wow.
In November.
Wow.
Okay, so that was real exciting for me. And I got to meet a lot of cousins that I didn't know, and that was fun. And the trip was great. We spent about a week there. But after being there a week, you know why there was so many people that came to
Oh,
the
I can
States.
imagine, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
place
so
like the United States.
There's really no place like the U.S.
But there's no place like Italy if you're eating or drinking
No,
wine,
if you're
right?
eating and drinking, the food was, I got to say, we were treated
Yeah.
like kings, and the
Yeah.
food was awesome.
Yeah.
And it was a trip of a lifetime, and we're glad to be back.
Good, good. So where'd you grow up in the United States then?
I actually grew up in Cleveland.
Okay.
Was raised in Cleveland, went to school in Cleveland, went to high school at Benedictine. And then after high school, I joined
It's east
the
side,
military.
isn't it?
That's on the east side,
East
up
side?
around what at that time was East Boulevard. Now it's Martin Luther King Drive over by Buckeye.
So is that was it 3 points or 5 points over there where there was like Irish neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood, and I think one was maybe Slovak or something years ago?
Well, in that area, you did have you had the Italian neighborhood over on by Woodland
Right.
area, and then once you move south of Woodland, it was a Polish neighborhood, and you were east of East Boulevard
Right.
was the Slovenian neighborhood. So we were there. We started out growing up in being in the Italian neighborhood. The house there was too small, so my parents ended up moving into the Slovenian part of the town over closer to Kinsman.
Okay. Yeah, I always like the ethnicity of the cities, and it's funny because in the Northeast you get that, but you go someplace like down south, there's no real ethnicity, European ethnicity, so you don't get the food and stuff like that.
No,
That's
Cleveland
great.
is really a melting pot area, a lot of nationalities around here, which is what makes this area
Right.
great.
It is, it is.
Yeah.
So when you went to Benedictine, did you graduate and then when did you join the military?
Well, I actually joined the military in May. I didn't graduate till June.
Okay.
And I
So
joined the
were you
military.
drafted or did you sign up?
No, I decided to join.
Okay.
I probably would have been drafted, but I decided to join. I decided to join because, of course, Benedictine is a college prep school, okay? And I really wasn't into going to college, okay? And I didn't feel like I really had any work experience
Right.
to do anything. I mean, I had jobs working at the drugstore, delivering and stocking and things like that, but I didn't really have any direction. So I joined the military so I could get away from home and just kind of decide what I wanted to do
How'd your parents
with
feel
my
about
life. Oh, that's interesting because, of course, my mom and dad were divorced, so I was living with my mom and my stepdad. But once I told my mom, I joined in June. I didn't tell my mom I joined until June 1st, the week before I was graduating and had to go in. And she spent that entire week at the Army Center trying to get me out.
I would imagine her perspective would be quite unique, being that she was in Europe during World War II, and I know Italy. Like even today, you got to join the military in Italy.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff,
Everybody
so
in
I
Italy.
imagine she would have a kind of a unique perspective on her son going off to war.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing, everybody in Italy does have to spend time in
Right.
the military.
That's true.
And I actually received a draft notice from the Italian Army.
Really?
Okay, in 1969. But at that time, when I got my draft notice, I was already in the military.
Okay.
And I was in basic, actually, at Fort Campbell. And I had to actually take a leave to go to the Italian embassy in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
To inform them that I couldn't go because I was already serving in the military.
Right.
Okay, so that was kind of an interesting.
That is kind of cool.
Yeah, interesting.
So how long between the time you graduated to the time you went off to basic training?
2 days.
Really?
Yeah. I graduated. I believe it was like something like June 6th, and on June 10th, I believe that was the date. I'm pretty sure it was June 10th.
So you're in the Army,
I was
right? You
enlisted.
joined the
I was
Army?
in the Army, yes.
And so where'd you go to basic at?
I went to basic at Fort Campbell,
Fort
and
Campbell.
I went there because my intention was to go Army Airborne. Okay, so I was in the 101st Airborne Boot Camp Division, and ended up about a month and a half in, severely damaging my right ankle. Okay, so I ended up spending about 3 months in the hospital while they reconstructed the ankle and everything. And then once I got out, I had to go through boot camp. You know, again, the second time. I will say my boot camp experience was really pretty pleasant because once I went back into boot camp because of my ankle injury, of course I couldn't jump anymore. They wouldn't let me jump. But they also wouldn't let me do any extenuating exercising.
Okay.
Okay. Most of the runs I didn't have to participate in. And when we went on the bivouacs, the 15, 20-mile hikes out into the country, I got to ride in the Jeep.
To ride in the truck.
I got to ride in the Jeep.
Well, there you go.
With the CEO.
So it's basic, I mean, from a standpoint of a young guy, was basic hard? I mean.
Well, no, basic really wasn't hard for me. I went in, of course, when I went in, I was 19 just before my 20th birthday. And so I was a little bit older, okay? Maybe a little more experience, a good thing for me, I think, but I didn't find basic hard at all. Actually, when I got out of basic, I was about 15 pounds heavier than when I went in.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I actually gained weight in basic.
So
I wrestled while I was in school. Okay, so my weight was maybe 120 pounds when I graduated.
So did you go to AIT at Fort Campbell too, or did you go somewhere else?
No, I didn't do any AIT after Fort Campbell. After my second tour in basic, they gave me an MOS of personnel specialist.
Okay.
And I was transferred to I was sent to a Air Force base in Florida, Homestead Air Force Base.
Oh, okay.
And I was in the Army Headquarters Division down there for the 101st Artillery.
Okay.
And my job was assigning job classifications to the guys that were being sent over to Vietnam.
So how long were you down there before you went to Vietnam?
Well, while I was down there just short of a year, okay? And while I was down there, I actually came up on orders to go to Vietnam 3 separate times.
Oh.
Okay? I came up on orders after I was down there for about 3 months, and my not my commanding officer, actually the division colonel who I was working for, actually took my name off the list.
He liked what you were doing for him, probably.
He must have liked what I was doing for him, so he took my name off the list. And about 3 months later, I came down on orders again. He took my name off the list again. And then about 3 months later, I came down on orders again. And of course, I was the first scrub to everybody going in to assign MOSs. So on that list, before I gave it to him, I scrubbed and took my name off of it. So he didn't see it. About 2 weeks later, my orders came down to go to Nam. And that was quite interesting because I can remember the call into my colonel's office, and he said, I've got orders here for you to go to Nam. I didn't see your name come across on any order list. And he looked at me and he says, how'd that happen? I said, I don't know, sir. Must have got missed somehow.
So you wanted to go?
Yeah, I wanted to go. I needed to get away from the desk job. Okay, it was great. I enjoyed what I was doing, but I felt I needed to go over, and now I wanted to go over now.
How'd your mom feel about that when you told her you were going?
Well, probably about the same way she felt when I enlisted.
Right.
Okay, but just she was a little more at ease after I'd been in a while now, and then so I did get over to Nam. I actually got over there and ran over right after Christmas. That was probably the 1st of January.
What year?
When I got into country. I got into country in 1971.
Okay, so you're kind of the tail end almost.
Yeah, I was kind of at the tail end of it when I got over there.
So when you're going over there, I mean, did you fly or take a ship or?
Oh no, we flew. Actually, went over on Tiger Airlines at the time. They were chartered. Flew in. I can remember getting in the country and being going out to a chopper site, okay, after we flew in to get choppered over to my
So did you go over with a group of guys you stayed with, or did you just go over as like a backfill or something?
No, I didn't go over with a group of guys I stayed with, because when I went over, it wasn't a group of guys that went there.
Okay.
Well, when I went over, of course, assigned MOSs, so I assigned myself an MOS of company clerk because I was working in headquarters companies when I was stationed here in the States. So I pretty much got the assignment that
So what kind of
I
unit?
wanted.
What kind of unit were you clerk for?
It was an artillery unit.
Oh, wow.
Okay, because that's where they put me when I got back out of having my ankle repaired. They put me into artillery.
So you were on
I
like a
stayed in
fire base or
artillery.
something like that, or?
No, actually we were our unit was out in the field, okay, with units, okay. Now our home base when we were on base was a company base, but it wasn't any artillery there.
Okay.
All the artillery was out in the outside.
Right, like
of
a
the
fire
main
base
base.
with just artillery
Exactly, exactly. But my CO was actually stationed on the main base.
Okay.
Okay. So we used to go out to the site, okay, the
And then come
artillery
back,
site,
yeah.
and then come back.
So, I mean, what's it like? You're probably, what, 20 at this point, 21?
I'm 20 at this point, 21. Interesting over there from my perspective because I was over there with a lot of guys that were really 18, 19 years old.
Right.
There was a lot of older guys that had been a long
Right.
time, but the younger guys, they had a lot of trouble, being over there. A lot of, with the combat and with the being out, constantly being when you're out in the field, you're constantly being shot at. I mean, we were over there late, but whether you're on site getting shelled because they want to take you out, or whether you're in a Jeep getting to the site and having to drive through the little hamlets and
Never know when
buildings
it's
on the
coming,
side,
yeah,
you just never know when it's coming. You've always got to be prepared. And guys had a hard time with that. And of course, on the main campus where we were at, okay, there was also, besides being artillery, there was also regular Army that was there. So you're mingling with all of these guys that are coming back and being out in the field.
Out and doing patrols
And
and stuff.
going out on patrols. And it's tough. I mean, fortunately for me, because of my MOS, I didn't have to go out on a lot of patrols.
Right.
Okay, I did a lot of perimeter duty on
Guard
the
duty
main
and
base,
stuff, yeah.
perimeter guard duty on the main base and that. But yeah, it was tough, but the young guys really had a hard time with it, okay? Of course, there was a lot of drinking and a lot of everything going on for people that, had a hard time with it. I guess maybe I was fortunate in that I was a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and I was able to stay out of, that scenario.
Right.
Of,
Well, they say
being caught up.
even with post-traumatic stress, they say that maturity has everything to do with post-traumatic stress.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
and that is so true because you've got to have a mentality. Of course, I also grew up in the inner city of Cleveland.
Right.
Okay, I grew up through the Huff riots, through the riots that came through East Boulevard and the Buckeye area when I was up there. And growing up, we were always getting into fights.
Right.
I mean, if you were out on a weekend and you stayed out late, you got in a fight with somebody. That's just the way life was
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
So fighting for me was just natural.
Right.
Okay, so maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't think I had a hard time over there. And plus my MOS being in artillery and not being on field, I'm sure that
Yeah,
had
it's
a lot
probably
to do with it as
probably a
well.
little different. So, I mean, I guess knowing that you X'd your name out so you would go to Vietnam, was there any of that point where you ever said, damn, why did I do that?
No, there really wasn't, because as much as I enjoyed what I did, when I, in the Army, when you get out of boot camp, you're in E3.
Right.
Okay, you come out automatically as an E3. I happen to come out of boot camp as an E2. Okay, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what happened. And when I got to the Air Force Base in Florida, for Army on an Air Force base, and which was Homestead Air Force
Pretty good
Base,
life, isn't it?
It was a good life, but there was not a whole lot to do out in Homestead, Florida at that time. Okay, so I had to create things for myself to do, and I got promoted to an E3 while I was in Florida, I believe 3 different times. Okay, so I
you were having a lot of fun.
I was enjoying myself, but I couldn't keep rank to save my life. There's no place for an enlisted Army guy to go on an Air Force base,
Right.
so I used to go into the officers club, the Air
Okay.
Force Officers Club. Okay, of course, every time I go in there and get caught, they
Throw you out.
throw me out. And
Yeah, they were pretty strict about
give
that back
me go write me up on Article 15, and I'd lose a stripe. So
Right.
couple weeks later, I'd get it back and lose it again. So I just needed to get out of that rut that I
Right.
was in and not being able to make rank. And it's interesting because when I got to Nam and I got into my CO's office and he looked at my credentials and he said, he asked me, first thing he asked me was, are you a troublemaker? And I looked at him. I thought that was kind of an odd question. I says, I don't think so. And he looked at me. He says, I've never had an E2 come into my office before.
Yeah, everybody's
Because when
E3,
I got there,
yeah.
I was still an E2 because everybody comes out of basic as a 3. I've already been in the service now, a year, and I'm coming in as an E2. But that was good. I said no. We worked out. I thought it was a good experience for me.
Any significant events happen over there that I mean, you still got any buddies or anybody you talked to that you knew?
No, we had a lot of buddies that I made some good friends while we were stationed in Florida at Homestead because it was such a small group of us that were there. But when I went to Nam, that kind of broke out. They had contact for a short while when I came back with some of those guys, but nothing real tangible for me.
Right.
I don't make friends real easily. I try to avoid those kind of situations. I'll always have, and still do. Friends are a lot of acquaintances, but not a whole lot of friends.
So when you're coming home, I mean, you flew out of there. I mean, so you come back to wherever you were flying out of. I mean, what's the feeling like knowing, once you step on that plane?
Well, it's it was the scary part was for me going in there was helicoptering into where I was going to be stationed, and the worst part for me was helicoptering out. Okay, because we had lost from where when I was down by close to the Cambodian border, down there, and a lot of the deaths that occurred on our end at that time of the year were new guys coming in and guys going home.
On the helicopter.
On the helicopters.
Yeah.
The helicopters getting shot down just from ground fire.
Right.
And that was perhaps the scariest part of my time there. Well, not the scariest, but
Was
one
sigh
of
of
the
relief
most
though
scary.
once you get on that airplane coming home
But
though?
once that chopper lands at the airport,
Yeah.
now that's a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
That was a sigh of relief. And of course, it was a long trip home. We flew into, I forget what fort it was. We flew into San Francisco.
Okay.
Air Base in San Francisco.
Travis Air
Travis
Base?
Air
Yeah.
Base in San Francisco. And well, I flew in. We got there probably, it was about 7:30 in the morning. Okay. Once we got there, we processed out, and by 9 o'clock, I was out of the Army.
Really? That quick?
That quick.
Wow.
Flew in, got in about 7:30, 9 o'clock. Went through all of the rigmaroles, the exit physicals. At 9 o'clock, 9:30, we were done. I was out of the Army. Find a way home. And that's what it
So
was.
did you fly home or take
Okay. Well, what I was gonna do, I mean, I went to look to see what the flights were, and there was some late flights. There wasn't any quick flights. The earliest flight I could get was something like 9 o'clock that evening because I was flying military standby.
Right.
Okay, because I wasn't gonna pay for anything, and so I decided to go check my bags and go out into San Francisco, and I figured I'd look around and maybe I'd stay out there.
Right.
Okay, that wasn't a very good experience.
Oh.
Okay, 5 minutes out into the street of San Francisco, walking around. I probably walked around the streets of San Francisco for about 2.5 hours. Okay, and I guess I'm lucky I didn't kill anybody in those 2.5 hours.
A lot of protesters.
Okay,
and
well,
stuff.
I had my uniform on.
Yeah.
I didn't have any skivvies.
Right.
Okay, any civilian clothes. So I had my uniform on, and in 2.5 hours, I must have been verbally assaulted, spat on at least 50 times.
Yeah.
Okay, walking through San Francisco, and I decided, well, obviously I'm not staying out here. I'm going back to the airport.
No,
Went
when
back to the airport.
you got home to Cleveland, was it different than California?
Well, when I got home to Cleveland, you're around family. So from that standpoint, yes, it was a little bit different because
But I mean,
there's more
from
family.
the protesting and stuff like that.
But what I decided to do when I got home is I took off my uniform, okay, and didn't put it on again.
Yeah.
Okay, when it came time to telling people what you did, you didn't tell them you were in the military.
Right.
Okay, you really weren't, because you had to really watch. I mean, at that time I was still 23 years old. We used to go to a lot of clubs.
Right.
Okay, and there was still a lot of resentment for the guys that were over in Vietnam.
Right.
So the conversation just got avoided.
So now when you came home, you went to Kent State, right?
Right. After I came home, I ended up going up
And
to
that was
decided to
not
use
a
my
very
GI
friendly,
Bill.
not a very friendly area for veterans
Well,
to begin with.
actually, Kent State wasn't bad because there was actually a Vietnam Veterans group at Kent State. that I joined when I got there.
Yeah, with the whole incident out there with the National Guard and the protests.
Yeah, but that was a couple years sooner, okay? And by the time I got over to Kent State, it was really, done. They still had their commemoratives, their commemoration. But the group of guys I got involved with at Kent State was really a great group of guys.
Wow.
Older than the students, a lot of good close friends that we made out of that group, all Vietnam era veterans, most of them actually serving in Vietnam. So there was a camaraderie there that was unlike anything I had anyplace else.
Right.
So I actually enjoyed being at Kent State, and that was probably one of the things that helped me get through and stay and finally get my degree.
I know like today all these colleges got veterans groups, and it's not new. I mean, that's been going on for years.
Yeah, they've been out for years, but being part of that Vietnam Veterans group at Kent State was special, at least for me, because it helped me assimilate back into society.
So once you got out of college, would you move on to your civilian career as?
Well, I got my bachelor's in business management. Ended up going into sales. Worked in sales for a couple of different companies. Worked for a company out of Pittsburgh for a few years. Transferred to a local company here as a sales manager for a few years. Then ended up, getting married and having kids.
So how'd you get to Medina County?
Well, actually, what happened was we were living out, had got married, had kids, and we were living out close to Kent State, where we were living. And my dad was getting old. He was in his 80s, and he was living in Garfield Heights. And my mom was getting old, and she was in her, 70s, living out in Mayfield Heights. They were both getting ill, and I was spending a lot of my time between the two, back and forth between them, and I wasn't spending any time at home with the kids. So I told my wife one day that, when I talked to my brothers and sisters, that I'm just too far away from everybody. So we decided my brother lived in Brunswick, so we decided to buy a house in Brunswick and take my mom and dad and move them in, buy a duplex and move them into one side. Right. Okay, and that's what we did. Okay, so that's how I got to Brunswick. My brother was here, and it was close. He could help me take care of my mom and dad.
And we're glad you're here too. So I know we got a few minutes left. I want to talk about. I know you're really involved in not just the VVA and AMVETS. You also sit on the Veteran Service Commission. Why is it important for you to be involved in those groups? And what do you see as their function?
Well, for me, and I can only speak for where I come from. For me, it's important for me to be able to have the community and other veterans come in, have a better experience than I had when I came home. I am very proud of my service. I'm very proud of the fact that I went to the military and that I served. Right. And all veterans that serve, I'm very proud of that. And I think it's important that as a community, we recognize that, because these guys have a hard time when they come back. Right. It is not easy coming back from the military into whether it's at a time of war or not a time of war. It is a hard transition. Right. And it's important that the community support these guys, and I wanted to be part of that support. And the work we do with the VVA that I'm involved in, with the AMVETS and with the VFW, most of it is geared towards getting these veterans that are coming back and helping them assimilate back into society. That's what's important.
So I know the office and the Medina County Veterans Memorial Fund and the coalition and all these groups, we put together this 50th commemoration this year for the Vietnam War. Why is it important to you? Why do you see, or when someone asks you, why are you doing this? What do you think the importance of this commemoration is?
Well, for me, the importance of this commemoration is that the recognition that the guys that served in Vietnam, really lost out on the respect they should have had when they came back. Right. Okay, there's absolutely no doubt about it. So I think the society has now changed. Society sees our military differently. So it's an ideal opportunity for the Vietnam era vets to experience some of that positive feedback because of their service. And for me, that's important. It recognizes the new generation of guys coming over. I think the Vietnam era vets have done a lot to help veterans and veteran benefits, in the last 25 to 50 years.
I think they've changed the world.
We have changed the way the world sees veterans. And it's important for our generation to pass the torch onto this new generation of veterans so that they know that they can make a difference, okay? And they're only going to make a difference if they step up
Right.
and make themselves
Yeah,
heard.
you gotta do something.
So I think it's a way for us to pass that torch on to this new generation of veterans that are coming out so that they know they can make a difference, and there is a society out there that's supporting them.
So any last words on, I guess some words of advice to a Vietnam veteran or a newer veteran on anything that you see that maybe they can use some help on? Or
Yeah, and my advice to them would be it's tough out there, especially when you're first coming back, because society doesn't understand you. They don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand what you're feeling. And you cannot express that to them because they just don't have the mental willingness or ability because they've not experienced
Right.
it. I would say get involved with a veterans organization. Oh my God, get involved with a veterans organization for no other reason than you're around guys that understand how you feel.
Right.
Okay, I've now been involved with the VVA here in Medina for about 10, 12 years, and we have had literally 30 guys that after joining us, okay, have a lot of their social and emotional issues helped.
Right.
Because there's an outlet for them there that understands. And don't get me wrong, we don't sit there and talk war stories, okay? But you know what? We can sit there and kibitz and point fingers at each other and make light of each other's situations.
Well, I think
that is done in a positive way.
I think some people think they're the only one, and I think it's good to get out and realize that, hey, I'm not the only one with these problems or these issues, that there are other people, and I can function again and get on with life.
Yeah, exactly. And I can think of myself and the situations I had when I came back, and there was some post-traumatic stress syndrome for me there as well, because people didn't understand.
Right.
And probably the biggest influence in my life at that time might have been my dad, who kept telling me that to get off my butt, because you know what, I had nobody to blame for how I felt but myself.
Yeah.
I was either going to start feeling good about what was going on, or I wasn't. There wasn't anything he could do to change that.
You're the only one that can make your life better.
And that's important for these guys to understand. They've got to take charge of their lives because they're the only ones that can make it better.
Well, I got to ask in closing, I ask everybody that comes on the show, if you had to do it all over again, would you still scratch your name off so you could go to Vietnam?
In a minute.
Joe,
in a minute.
I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month on Salute to Service, and we're going to have up, we are the 50th commemoration of the Vietnam War. Our history is going to be on the 30th at the Brunswick Eagles Club, so we're going to have some information up for you to get on that. Thanks again. We'll see you next month.